right. Hello, everybody. We're getting going here. Was like a half a minute late. Hey, Stuart. We're here. Oh, we got a bunch of people wanting to join today.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, well, thank you. I was just telling my nephew, he says, it's my favorite day. I like it better than Christmas. I said, well, my favorite day is April 19th because then, I wish there was a Grinch who stole birthdays, I'd be saying, hey, thanks for coming. Well, anyway, I thought I'd just read a little bit and then we'll start a guided meditation if you're okay, Stuart, with if you can help us rope climbers to find out how to do this. I've been really looking forward to it myself too, because it is there's an art to it, and if you're just stumbling around, it doesn't work very well. But I just wanted to read one quick dream here, and then we'll get into it. Okay. It's a dream of a patient of Marie-Louise von Franz. She said she heard the mighty deep sound of a bronze bell, an extraordinary ringing such as she had never heard or imagined, a sound from beyond of extraordinary beauty, irresistible. Fascinated, I somehow had to get to the source of this sound, which could only have been a divine one. She found the church, and it was like the nave of a cathedral made of a transparent, living red-orange material, bathed in a reddish light and supported by a forest of pillars that reminded her of stalactites in a cave. Just a second, we got Charles here.
Happy birthday, Craig.
Well, thank you. I was just telling everybody that I wish they'd make a movie about the Grinch that stole birthdays. So April 19th is my favorite day. But anyway, so she found this sound, and it was, the church was like the nave of a cathedral made of a transparent, living red-orange material, bathed in a reddish light and supported by a forest of pillars that reminded me of stalactites in a cave. For a moment, I saw myself as standing tiny and alone in this immense hall, dazzled with the sense that I had a whole world to explore here. But then she discovered that she was within her own heart. She was standing in the interior of her own heart, and she realized at that moment that the wonderful bell sound, which she could still hear, was nothing other than the beat of her heart. And, I thought of that when Stuart mentioned to listen to the energy of the life in the heart, and here is a woman who was hearing it ring in a bell. So if everyone is ready, what do you think? Maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes? What would you prefer, Stuart?
It doesn't really matter. Sometimes doing a really short one is better than doing a big long one, because there's less chance of people goofing off.
Oh, so exactly. Trying to keep
short, even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then do two of them.
Okay. Well, why don't we start out with
better than?
Yes, I agree. Well, why don't do you think 10 minutes would be okay?
See how it goes.
10 minutes?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to set it for 10 minutes, but you end it whenever you whenever
Okay, we'll just.
Okay.
Craig, just before I begin, just so we're all on the same page, as it were, the felt feeling, the felt sensation that Raff discusses is very important. I remember being in a place where this guy, he was a professional singer, he lived, And I called around to his house one morning and he was practicing. And he was doing arpeggios. Like he was singing these arpeggios. Now, there's no way he's going to stand up in front of a crowd and sing arpeggios, but he was practicing. He was training his voice. So in the same way, we've got to train our perception. We bring our perception down to this sort of transitional space where we're nothing, and the ally then can come in and influence our development. If I meet the ally in my ordinary state of consciousness, I'm already solid. I have my belief system. I'm already here. But by bringing awareness into this very, very, very sort of small place, the place of my beginning, that's where the practicing is done. And if you don't feel this aliveness, I'm going to use a different word. If you don't feel this current within yourself, if you can't connect with the current, don't worry. Sit in this place and it will develop. The current is not up to you. The current is the ally's touch on your mind. Do you see? So the practice is to go in and stand at the bus stop and wait. Don't get involved in it. Leave your story outside. Leave all your mental activities outside. Just keep coming back to standing at the bus stop. Yeah, makes sense?
He says in one place to perceive through the eyes of the inner figure, through the ally. And, you know, that is a way to kind of get rid of ego a little bit. I mean, I don't know, but anyway, that seemed enlightening to me. So
Sandy, again, just before we begin, Sandy, you had mentioned last week, you asked about this soft, pleasant place, this sort of warm, I think you described it as a warm, pleasant place. That's probably a good way of describing a good space within our meditation. We get to this warm, pleasant place within ourselves. And that place is sort of timeless. We lose time in it. Now, if you can sort of bring a little bit more of yourself back in at that level and just look for the sensation, look for the animation, look for the point of contact, find out where the current is in that place. What is this warm, if there was a little bit more aliveness to come into this space, how would it affect me? So the body is we're meeting this sensation, this aliveness, this current at the very beginnings of our body, if you like, where life enters our body. So you know, the aliveness is mine because I feel it, it's me, whereas the current is not mine. The current is more universal. So finding the current is like finding the static charge within the mind where aliveness flows out of. Yeah. So anyway, you all have to find your own way. I can't describe it. That's it. You got to do it for yourselves. So is that okay?
yeah. Okay.
Any questions before we start?
No, I'm ready,
Okay.
Stuart. I'm already there, I think.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, if you just close your eyes and just allow your attention to move inward. And just connect in with your breathing, the inhale and the exhale. And if there's any noises around, any disturbances in the place where you are, just include them. Just bring them in and have them as part of what's going on. And allow the sensation of your breathing bring you into your lungs, into your body, feeling your diaphragm. And just relax your body, starting at the top of your head, just like water flowing down off your body. Just follow the relaxation down through your body. Feeling your shoulders relax. Allowing your body to be supported by the chair. And just allowing yourself to be supported in the ground, feeling your feet on the ground. And be very aware of the descent as you move inwards. Using the inhale and the exhale to keep yourself stable. Keeping your attention. Using the exhale to bring yourself deeper. Sinking right down with the exhale. And finding that stillness at the very bottom of each exhale. Just bring your attention to that point of stillness. Being very attentive to what's happening. Feel the aliveness of the space that you're entering into. And just be aware of how it affects you. Any small movements, involuntary twitches, your eyes might flicker. All the time sinking down. Just feeling for the current with your attention. The current as it affects your body. Don't try to go too deep. Just go to that warm, pleasant place. Feeling any sensation. Just allowing it to be. If your head wishes to move, then allow it to move. Gently cooperating. And just stay present within yourself, whatever might be occurring. Just allowing the current to enter into you. Just breathing in this current. Feeling your heart expand as you breathe in this light, this current, this aliveness. And just acknowledging the presence that's there. Whether you're aware of it or not. Acknowledging all those who come around as part of this current. Again, inhaling the energy, the light, presence, filling yourself up. Once again, acknowledging all those who come around you. Slowly just bring your sense back, allowing yourself to slowly move away, withdrawing slowly, holding that presence as you slowly come back to your ordinary consciousness. Baby steps. Maintaining the feeling, holding on to the sensation, feeling the fullness. As you bring yourself back to your ordinary waking consciousness. Holding the two spaces side by side. And gradually, in your own time, opening your eyes slowly, but again holding this internal space. So that you're both here and there. And just bringing yourself fully back into your ordinary state of consciousness. Feeling your hands, rubbing your hands together, your fingers. Feeling your feet on the floor. And yet still maintaining that link with the inside. And just sitting quietly in the room. Feel yourself back in the room. Try to hold that space with you, even though you're back in the room. It's like you've opened a door. Keep the door open, even though you're back in the room. This being still back in the room, holding that space even though you're here, it's very important. It's part of the practice. Maybe you can still feel that presence in your hands or inside your body. And then gradually, bit by bit, just allow your attention to come fully back, away from that space. So now you're back being yourself fully. in the room, joining with others. So is everybody fully back, yeah? See heads nodding. Yeah, that's good. That was a very quick practice, if you want to call it that, a very quick practice. And the reason I did it so was to show you that you don't need a long time. You don't need to go off for half an hour and create a fantasy for yourself, which is what happens at that length of time. Either you go asleep or you start to amuse yourself. So by keeping the practice short, focused, to the point, it's better. And then as you come out of the practice, bring it with you. Don't just return to your ordinary everyday consciousness just like that. Slowly backtrack your way out of that deep space within yourself and bring that energy with you. Hold on to it, whatever way you experience it. And I absolutely guarantee you, if you didn't have an experience, well, maybe the next time you might have, but it won't take long. Yeah. So how many of you felt what you would describe as current? How many of you felt the current or that activity? Craig, yeah.
I felt a buzz, some
Yeah.
kind of a buzz. And I tried to drop into the buzz.
Yeah. That's it. That's whatever it is for you. Feel it, whatever way it manifests for you. And just merge yourself with it. Feel it as the warm, fuzzy feeling, or as an activity, or maybe your eyes will flutter. Or maybe you might find your shoulder, you might start rocking like this, it might be quite strong. Doesn't matter. If it starts coming in very strong and your head starts doing this, just bring yourself back. It doesn't need to be dramatic. Keep it just at the level of subtle, just like that, very gentle, subtle feeling. If it was a sound, it would be a soft sound. Not a loud sound. Movement is a small movement, not a big movement. See, and then as you come back into the room, bring it with you so that you can begin to have that feeling with you, so that then when something resonates deeply from within you.
The word you
How
used,
long was that?
just now.
I'm not sure. It was probably about just a little over 10 minutes, not too much longer. But I've had that feeling of you come. The thing I like about it, doing this on a regular basis, is I can drop into it, at any time, doing it and just get into that energy. And I did that with Zen meditation, but I think the idea of this, I don't know, with if you look at the way that Jeffery Raff has his two sections set up, I mean, he talks about the alchemical coniunctios. The first coniunctio, which is spirit and soul. So he calls it the first coniunctio, the beginning practices. And they mostly concern the getting into developing the ability to perceive imaginally, developing a perception to perceive imaginally. He comes at this from so many different directions, and basically is his own visions. Now that's the wrong one. I was going to show you the second, his second chapter is, I think, this one here. Let me see if that's it. Yeah. So see, now then he has the second chapter, or the second section, which is the second Coniunctio, the intermediate practices, the feeling the ally, knowing yourself. Now, and then he has advanced practices. So, if he's following the alchemical model.
Craig, can I just say something there? Can I jump in for a sec? Yeah. This path is very similar to the path of spiritualism in developing mediumship. Now, what's mediumship? Well, it's just a deep perceptive ability. So that's what we're developing here, just the ability to deeply perceive. So the stages that we're talking about in these chapters would be described as overshadowing. Now, in spiritualism, they're talking about identities, but that's not far wrong from the mark. We present ourselves as an identity to this space. I go there with my name and my form, everything about me, my story. I am an identity. So the way that we're going to open up to this energy more than likely is by meeting an identity. We expect it to be something. So that expectation creates this sort of overshadowing. There's something in us that wants to build it up into something. That's our expectation. We want it to happen. So we're all the time encouraging it to become something that we can recognize. Now, that's probably the first mistake. By going in and just feeling the sensation, the aliveness, and developing this sort of felt sense, what you're doing is you're creating the relationship before it comes into form. And it's much better that way, because it's like you're putting the foundation in before you try to put the house on top of it. If you build a house first, you're never, ever, ever going to go back and put in the foundation. You'll have your story and you'll run with whatever story that is. Whereas doing it this way, remembering that, if I want to be a singer, I've got to practice arpeggios, I've got to stretch my voice, I've got to develop the muscles of my mind if I want to go into these deeper places. See, and what you're meeting is pure mind. So you go beyond it. What are you into? You're into pure light. This amazing, pristine brightness. But there's no form in that place. How can we relate with that? Do you see? So we've got to allow it to develop into something that will relate with us. And that's why we go in and hold this middle ground. And then you could be walking down to the bus, you could be going to the shops, and you could have your practice going on with your eyes wide open as you walk the dog. Thanks.
That's one of my experiences too, is that to talk about the ally itself is is really, you're leaping to what's essentially the third Coniunctio. I mean, you're leaping into where there is now a center of awareness that exists in the synchronistic world. I mean, in the world where psyche and matter are one, where past, present, and future have all happened, and this is the world of the spiritualists too. I mean, they can, the idea is they're permeable to a realm that that is their ability to perceive things that happen in the future, their ability to bring things up that happened in the past. I mean, the idea is there is a permeability with the synchronistic world, the world where there are not discrete moments. Everything that has happened and will happen exists in that realm mysteriously, you know, and the person who's permeable to that realm has access to some things from that are yet to be, or that have happened in the past, voices that come from the past, you know. One of the amazing things about Jung is his mother's family were all mediums, you know. I mean, his mother was very uncanny at night, and so was his aunts. Were his aunts? I mean, his aunts were these very unusual people, you know, who they just look like. And then his well, here's his aunts. Check this out. This is Jung's mother in the middle, and his two sisters. And you know, one of his mother's jobs, if you ever look up, her father was Samuel Pricework. He's a very famous hymn writer, and her Emily's job was to chase away ghosts while he was writing his sermon, because he was so accessible or permeable to this world as a medium, you know. And then he also, you know, had his really introduction to this world was, I don't know, these are little pictures, but this is his cousin, Aileen Pricework, and she was a very accomplished medium, you know. So I mean, this was Jung's mother's family. I mean, they're all these you know, people who were very permeable to
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, just jumping across, just a little bit more information. In the world of spiritualism, they talk about us all having a gatekeeper. So again, this is an identity in the spirit world. It's somebody who accompanies us throughout our entire life. We never lose that gatekeeper. We always have access to that gatekeeper. That gatekeeper keeps us safe. And in terms of keeping us safe, it keeps our integrity safe, our integrity of mind. So it prevents any sort of step-ins from occurring. So it's like minding my back, basically. That's the purpose of the gatekeeper. But another purpose of this energy is to introduce guides to us as and when we need them. So again, from a spiritualist point of view, they would say, well, we all have access to a higher level of wisdom. And this level of wisdom must be the level of spirit guides. So these are identities that form out of the background and come forward to assist us in our life, depending on what we need at that time. So our guides change. We could have a guide with us for 10 years, and we'd be very familiar to working with that energy, that guide. And then you go in and suddenly find, well, that energy is gone, because something else is being required and we're moving into a new phase of our life. So we're constantly creating and remaking and reshaping these inner relationships. Something that worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. So that's why we go in and we practice all the time, so that we can be familiar with these subtle changes that might occur within us, so that we're not through our own mental set putting the same reality onto a different energy. You know, oh, who's your guide? Or my guide is this person. Well, hang on, that person only worked with you for 5 years. So who's been working with you for the last 5 years? Oh, I thought it was them. Do you see? Now, this is the spiritualist point of view, but it's probably not far wrong. You can adapt it and you could say, well, okay, I loosely accept some of that and apply it to see, well, where do my experiences fit into that? And then there's a higher level of, again, which are energies that really only sort of come to do a certain purpose, a certain job in hand. And when they hit, they you know, when those type of energies come in, if you're a medium, if you're open to this type of thing, you know all about it. Because when you're hit with one of those sort of higher energies, they will wipe you out. it'll be a hugely emotional experience. And you could very easily describe it as saying, well, I had a transcendent experience, a peak experience. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. From the outside, that's what it looks like. But from the inside, you're meeting an intelligence. From the inside, if you're able to relate with it, there's a presence within that experience that is able to relate with you. And it's a very shamanic, mediumistic, whatever word you want, active imagination. It's all the same field. And it's about communicating beyond our own story. Keeping our story on the outside so that we can have a sort of more accurate dialogue with this ally. And if you don't practice, you won't get the benefit of it. You do practice, this practice will help you in all different aspects of your life, not just when you sit down to work with dreams or content.
I really liked what you said last time was that you're that the tree bears fruit and you eat the fruit, and then you realize that it was not about the tree, it was about the fruit of the tree, you know, that you're eating. And that's what one of the things Jung said, is that this is a something very few people are gifted. They have to earn it, you know, through the practice. I mean, through doing it I mean, in other words, to get these types of very high level images is very hard work. I mean, it's very prolonged. And
Craig, the woman behind channeling White Eagle teachings, I don't know if any of you have heard of the White Eagle teachings. There's a White Eagle Church, a White Eagle Foundation. It's sort of a global teaching. Well, that was a group energy from spirit. The woman behind channeling that, she had her first experience of that energy 8 years before she actively began to channel it, to work with it. It took 8 years to develop that relatedness so that she could dialogue with that energy. And the guy in Brazil, João de Deus, John of God, the healer working in Brazil, some of the energies he works with, when they come in, he experiences nosebleeds. Now, you know, he is what he is and he does what he does, and you could look at that and judge that. But his work itself, the work that he as a healer, when he's incorporated, as they call it, the different energies, some of the energies come in and they're quite light on his body, and then some of the energies come in and his body can't hold the energy for long. And apparently, and I have a friend who lives down there, he says that he's seen when those bigger energies are present, people would be falling all around him like flies. I've been down there myself and I had that experience, and that is what happens. And it's the strength of the presence that comes in. And you know, you can put whatever, you know, it is the Holy Spirit. That's what it is. But it's within personalities doing the work of the Holy Spirit. So I don't know, is Craig gone or is he? Oh, there he is. Yeah, he just changed position. Okay, Craig. Sorry, is it okay to jump in and out like that?
oh yeah, certainly. I just I think my wife is doing a Zoom meeting simultaneously, and she just, you know, zoned us out. But the one thing now, Jung took this approach that, you know, he you know, had his visions in the 1913 through 1920 period, you know, and he took this very interesting approach to it, where he was going to, I mean, he felt he was had to remind himself all the time that he lived on 228 Seestrasse in Kusnacht, and he was the father of you know, 5 children, and he, you know, his wife was Emma Young. I mean, so he was trying to maintain this human presence, you know, and he was trying to find historical antecedents to it, because, you know, Jung was ever the investigator, and he wanted to know, what Agnella Jaffe said, that he was told her that what really gripped him is he wanted to understand. So he wanted to understand. And Barbara Hanna said that he was like Odysseus and Proteus. I don't know if you know that story, but there was a person named Proteus who was he was a semi-god, and he in him there was no artifice. He was completely someone who was, there's no falseness in, and so Jung's here's somebody's describing him here. It is he was he who cannot be fooled and always speaks in sooth. He's in truth a soothsayer, yet he cannot be grasped. He changes shapes too quickly. And Barbara Hanna said that Jung, like Odysseus, made it his goal and task to seize Proteus and force him to explain the deep secrets of the ever-changing, shifting images of the unconscious. And Hippolytus says of Proteus that he can best be translated by he who cannot be fooled, but he spins round and changes his shape. He behaves therefore like a revolving image that cannot be grasped. So, but everything he said was true. And what Odysseus wanted to know was, how does he get back home? Because there was, the gods had turned off all the winds. So he wanted to know what he had done to offend the gods, and so he needed to get Proteus to explain it to him. And this is from Barbara Hanna. Jung made it a rule never to let the figure or figures in dreams or visions leave until they told him why they had come. In not letting the figures of the vision leave until they told him why they had come, Jung was like Menelaus with Proteus. Menelaus, who could not return home because he had offended the gods, learned from Proteus' daughter Idothea that if he could capture her father, he could force him to reveal which of the gods he had offended and how he could propitiate them and return home. So this lines up with, I think, two things in Jung's approach to the imaginal world. Okay, there's two aspects of it. One, he was a person who was mythless. He had no myth, and he realized, he knew what it was like to live with a myth, and he knew what it was like to live without a myth. So he wanted to create. He realized, like the Sufis did, that the only thing that exists is the unique Lord of the individual. There is a unique name of God that is born with us and is with us all our life. And they, through the dialogue with this individual, according to alchemy, a third center of awareness is created, which is neither in the timeless world of the unconscious, nor is it in the ordinary world of ordinary reality, but it's this middle place where the awareness in that middle place can be shared by the unconscious and the ego. And this was where your myth is created. And they called it, the alchemists called it the philosopher's stone, or it also could be called the divine child. But it's this third entity which is living. So the beings in the unconscious are living, the ego is living, and they together, this, what the alchemists say, this cannot occur in nature. The philosopher's stone cannot occur in nature. But the idea of the Philosopher's Stone and the idea of the dialogue of an alchemical meditation with the imaginal world is to create and now this I don't know how much you've experienced of this, Stuart, is to create the evolution of the God image. Because these figures in the unconscious are longing for the light, he says. They're longing for the light. There's this picture of Young painted where he is pouring water on plants and they grow. And then in the plants, there are all these little Kabiri figures. So in other words, Young, through his consciousness, is irrigating the unconscious world so it can appear in consciousness, and through this, yeah, go ahead.
Right, just on that, if you think about this, it's very, very easy to see the clarity in it. If me as myself going through the world, everything is filtered through my past, the filters of my past, my family dynamic, shadow stuff, the whole lot, everything, my ego dynamic, everything that I receive is filtered through all of that before it arrives into the world as my action, my thinking, my design. But in going back and sitting in these spaces and having that direct experience at the level that we're talking about, without that story being present, I'm creating a means whereby that sort of presence can access into my world without being filtered through my story. I have this other self. It's like the it manifests within our world as an autonomous complex. Okay, so I give that the name of Patrick or whoever, but it's separate. It is inherently separate, and it's coming into my life today as a new energy today. It hasn't been with me in a conscious way from the beginning, so it's clean, it's fresh, and it begins to create a new direction in my life. So this energy is very effective for us. The more you sit, the more of this that you bring into your life, it activates your process. It'll bring stuff up, sure, but it also offers opportunity. Mm-hmm. And it, you have to try it. You have to see what it is yourself. But it is everything that Raff has said.
Yeah, and one image that I always thought was very appealing was the beings of the unconscious. Let's take elves and fairies, okay? Elves and fairies lack for nothing, I mean, they live forever. They don't need food. They don't feel pain, but there is one thing they lack. And they steal babies. They steal human babies. And they leave in its place a wizened old changeling, who's really in truth this old fairy, but it assumes the form of that person's baby. Then they take the baby back to the fairyland, because the one thing that this world lacks is the promise of youth. Life is a becoming thing. It always is seeking newness, round and round, there's this shaker hymn that I forget what it is, but it's, that, it's the one about it's a blessing to be simple. It's a blessing to be free, and I think I maybe have it here, but this is the idea here is the, let me see if I can find this. Yeah. To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning we come out right. You know, I mean, the idea is the figures of the unconscious want to evolve. One thing Jung noticed about beings in the other world, beings who had died, you know, in other words, he had some experience of them. You know, I mean, he had this, he never said this, and this is stuff that was left out of the memories, dreams, and reflections because it was too weird. You know, he would, his whole life, he saw faces of people who were about to die. And he also had people come to him for advice after they died, you know. And one of the things he discovered was that there's not a lot of growth in the other world. So that is the one thing they lack, like the elves and the fairies lack, the promise of youth. So this was the idea of the alchemical dialogue, is through the, and it was the idea of the real need for an ego. You know, the idea is that nature knew that it wanted to evolve. So it needed an Archimedean point to look back at itself that was free of the participation mystique of most animals. It was an ego consciousness that was separated from nature. This ego consciousness now is the vehicle, and this is why we dream about cars all the time, is the vehicle for the evolution of these unconscious figures. And the only way it can do it, though, is if the ego realizes it's not the master in its own house. It is there as the vehicle of the evolution of transcendent consciousness. And it does this through its turning back, having a dialogue with the unconscious, creating the new thing, which is the philosopher's stone, which brings forth this new myth that is only ours. And Edward Edinger tells the story of the burning tree. This was told by Nicodemus, who appears it was a dream of Nicodemus, who appears in the book of John. There was a burning tree, it was an alchemical tree, and it bears fruit. And whenever this fruit is ripe, it's harvested and taken to an eternal storehouse. Now, in this eternal storehouse, that's our lives, okay? Our lives have a resonance that changes all the fruit that comes after it. And the resonance is this strange substance called DNA. Seems to have an aspect of it of memory, of ancestral memory. And those strands in the DNA are altered forever by the resonance of our lives or your life, you know. And so this is kind of the alchemical myth, is that the purpose of the human being is not to be an ego in the outer world, but to be the vehicle of what Jung called now there's lots of figures in the unconscious, okay? And you know, they are alive, but there's one he called the self, which was the archetype of order. And this was that aspect that wanted to evolve, you know. Now, so this was, and of course, there's a self that you're born with. I mean, anyway, the idea of the alchemical meditations, rather than, and Jung, you know, had a you know, he was a shaman, he was a medium. Most shamans are mediums. Now, some shamans are mediums that were healers, that were doctors. Other other ones were mediums like the one to Black Elk, who brought a new myth into the Lakota Sioux, you know, that he had experienced in his life. So there's mediums to the departed. There's mediums that can go into your body and pull out the sickness. And then there's these mediums who bring a new myth to, or, you know, evolve the myth of the of God. Now, the thing that's funny about you know, most indigenous tribes is they evolve very slowly, you know, because they don't. But you go in to Western mass civilization where all the myths have been exploded. I think this is really an evolutionary necessity, that all our images needed to be exploded, the ones that we project outside of us, so that the only thing we have to rely on now is the Lord of the individual, the Lord within us. And so the next religion of the water bearer. Oh, go ahead.
Well, hold that thought. I just really was touched by what you just said about most indigenous tribes evolve very slowly. And in parallel to what we are talking about of this, the process of individual individuation is the collective evolution. And I believe what I'm feeling is that the indigenous tribes are like the humanity unconscious. And this Western reason-centered focus that we in the civilized world bring is like the ego. And in order to evolve as a species, we need both elements. We need the vast library of unconscious images and material that the indigenous have developed over thousands and thousands of years. And we also need this kind of sharp ego consciousness that allows for reflective evolution of the duality of those two worlds. So that what I'm feeling is there's also a coniunctio between the indigenous cultures and this modern technological reason-centered ego culture. I just think that's a
they're less unbroken. They're less broken. Yeah, the indigenous peoples are less broken. They are closer to their bodies and closer to nature. Western man is so far removed from his nature and so distant and broken from his body and his nature that, and I think there's a reason for it. I think that the self wants that. It wants the ego to totally separate from its body and become this incredibly intelligent, separated from the nature, to be now come back and be its unbelievably strong vehicle of understanding. Go ahead, Stuart. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. The what I feel you're talking about there, and also what Tim is bringing in, it raised the question of direct contact. Like in my world, if you like, what I've worked around through Gestalt would be helping people to bring awareness into contact and to have a real living contact with their lives. But so many people are removed, as you say, Western people are removed from that through their need to introspect, through their need to cognitively get involved, and spoiling the direct contact. It's like not allowing it just to be. to be natural, and to be alive. So the wisdom of these indigenous people lies in their ability to have that direct contact with nature. And then for us to connect with that, like we go up, we do retreats, we have weekends, and we connect more so in a direct way with that nature, and we think it's wonderful. And then we come back into the groups and we sit in the groups and we talk about it. And it's like, well, hang on, what are we doing? We're moving away from the direct contact. So to bring awareness to ourselves in how we divide away from that direct contact is very, very important. And to have an element of our practice, whatever we do, that brings us back into direct contact without that need to cognitively understand it afterwards. To leave it as it is, and maybe integrate it in different ways, through movement or through dance or through drawing or through writing or some other way, but not sort of dissecting it down into that sort of cognitive pigeonholed pieces of knowledge which kill it stone dead.
It's irrational.
And I think this particular area is an area that we need to have that living contact with, because what we're connecting with is alive. It's not organized in the way that our minds are organized. It's alive, it's raw, in the sense that it's not us yet. Now, as soon as it comes into us, then it becomes ours, and we organize it accordingly, in whatever way that we do. But I think Jung was a very unique person, in that he could describe rather than organize. He organized through his describing. So what we get from his teachings and from his writings is nearly like a direct contact. The numinosity is still in the writing. It's still in his pictures. It's in his descriptions. It comes alive for us because he hasn't killed it.
He wouldn't do it. It was irrational. And that's when he talks about the symbol that is understood is dead. It is only the symbol that is irrational and still has mystery about it that is alive. So that he used to say about the and I don't think this is necessarily true, but once the god has left the temple, it never returns. I mean, the idea was that the symbol creation, especially for Western man, who has lost all his projected religions, where we project the Lord of the individual out on some outer deity, and don't have the direct experience anymore. I think there was a huge, and this is something the poet Robinson Jeffers says, that civilization took a wrong turn when history began to be written in prose instead of poetry, or recorded and I think also it took a wrong turn, at least as far as the soul is concerned and the psyche is concerned, with the development of writing, with written records. When there was only the oral tradition, everything was fluid. There were not such a thing as abstract concepts and things. Everything was fluid, and it all related to direct experience, of the divine within us. And then when you started having written sacred texts, well, I don't need direct experience because I got the written sacred text, which is dead, So, I mean, the idea, I think let's say there was a Christianity without any sacred texts, or there was any religion without sacred texts, it would be informed by the dreams and the visions of each generation that came along, just like, because it would be now an oral tradition, which would be always added to. Well, we unfortunately are impoverished in that sense. So in our our sins. If we want, I mean, it's one thing to experience the paranormal. It's another thing to realize that the task of tasks of each individual is to develop their own myth and their own meaning, because they don't have one anymore.
So
They're cut
Greg-
off from their roots. And they go ahead.
well, this just makes me think of our current situation. And we're getting our shorts in a twist because we keep arguing over what the founders intended, especially in the US with our Constitution. There's all this dialogue about what was this country intended to be. And I think it's exactly this same question. We keep going back to the Constitution and looking at it with a microscope to see if we can't determine what these people thought was the right idea, instead of becoming available ourselves to the witness of numinosity. Because we all know that a nation based on we the people, for the people, by the people government is all about inclusion and learning how to dialogue with each other. It's not about trying to follow the rules. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. So it's just a different way of looking at the same.
It has a complete absence of the feminine and the maternal, which is our mother. I mean, the idea is that I think that the world of the mother is the world of mercy, the world of compassion, the world of acceptance, the world of forgiveness. It's totally fluid, and it allows for deviations, and is not so impressed with this righteousness and perfection of this static senex world of the father that is unchanging. I mean, this is what all fairy tales tell you. There's an old king. His kingdom is sterile. Nothing's happening in it. He needs something to redeem it. Now, this is the whole thing. This is, if you really, what the myth is intended to do is our goal, our role in alchemy anyway, the role in alchemy is that the individual is to redeem the divine in his own life because it is hidden. He lends no attention to it. So it lies latent until he is ready to have the direct experience and the dialogue and to make these inner figures come alive. They are alive, but they're not alive in us. Until we lend our ego to them, our consciousness to them, and allow them to become alive, and then have this shared awareness through direct experience and through the practice that Stuart's talking about, it's imprisoned, it's locked up, and this was their idea of that the redemption, redeeming, the saving thing is in a fairy tale. Take it, for instance, in a fairy tale, the king, the ego, the patriarchal worlds has two favored sons and one who is a fool. And there needs to be a task that's enacted. His two favored sons fail entirely. The only one that succeeds is really the son of the mother, and this is the one who uses animal helpers, who links back in with the direct experience of nature and allows it to be his guide. As Parsifal, the only way he could find the Grail Castle the second time was to drop the reins of his horse and let direct experience or his direct dialogue with I really think, and what do you say about this, Stuart, is these voices are nature itself.
I think,
I'm
Greg, I think we all have to ask the question, where are we coming from? The journey is a blood and guts journey. It has to be that. It can't be written on paper. It's your own experience of what it is. But to ask yourself, okay, where am I approaching from? Because if you're not going to change your mind about yourself, well, then you're never going to have an experience of more than yourself, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to allow yourself to experience yourself differently within this journey. You've got to realize you're made up of many, many, many different personalities, and they're all inspiring you to be yourself. You're the leading edge of the wave. You're the tip of the wave that's hitting the beach, but you've got the entire ocean behind you. Do you see? And that ocean is part of you as well, even though it's unknown. But it becomes known into you as soon as you open your mind to what you are yourself. Do you see? And part of that experience of more is in the realization that these energies come to you. Like, there's two distinctly different experiences that you will have, and one is of identity. These energies will present as identity to you, and the other experience is that will present as energy in a more sort of fundamental way, and you've got to be able to relate with both, and relating with both is a blood and guts experience. Do you know, I can't turn around and tell each of you what's going to happen to you. You've got to experience it for yourselves. And to the extent that you do that, you will become alive. And then you will have knowledge, direct knowledge, which is not written down by anybody else. It'll be your knowledge, your knowing, based on your experience, which is inspired by these energies flowing through you. And you see, it's so individual in its form. It's closer than close to us, and we've got to go there ourselves to have that experience. Otherwise, you just become another person talking about. You see, and the world is full of people talking about things. You see, and everybody is dead.
I realized that after I had 14 years of analysis, and learned a little bit about interpreting dreams and symbolic language, but it was only until I stopped analysis and started doing direct experience or active imagination that I really feel I progressed at all. And one thing Gerhard Dorn says, that it's more important to know what you are rather than who you are. Now, what does that mean? He means that you are not a closed circuit. You are meant to be a partner with one of these living figures within you. And until you realize that, knowing what this closed circuit of the ego is, it's very limited and it can't go outside it. And this unlimited world, unlimited universe, which it has access to, if you realize that you're you are the being in time and space that is supposed to conduct a dialogue using lending your attention, lending your unconscious to these living figures who exist in the unconscious, and to bring them alive into the outer world, that's what you are. It isn't important who you are. It's important what you are, and this is the idea of one thing that Peter Kingsley said, that when he walked into a place where there was a bunch of indigenous peoples, a couple women would come up to him and say, "You are of the ancestors." And he said, "How did you know that?" "We could tell by the way you walk." You know, I mean, there was just something about his felt sense that, you know, showed that he was someone who was, you know, you are of the ancestors. You are one who has realized what you are. And that is someone who's to be in touch with the ancestral world of the living beings of the unconscious, and that you're now a vehicle of it. And they can tell you're in touch with that and having the direct experience of it by the way you walk. You know, there's just something about your bearing that we can see, you know, and we know that you're one of us, even though we've never met you before. You know, one thing Jeffrey Raff says about the felt sense, and he always stresses this felt sense. And I experience the felt sense in myself when I'm doing a little bit of visioning, you know, and something happens, and then I know I didn't create this. This is not me, but I know something. It turned left, or you know, the river's full of dry leaves. I didn't do that. I didn't want it to happen, but I saw it. So there was this sense of the felt sense, and he's always talking about this. So you know, I've met him a couple of times, and he's a little bit aloof and standoffish, and I thought it was because he used his felt sense on me and thought I was a big phony. You know, I mean, there was this Hasidic rabbi called the Seer of Lublin, and he could look at a person's forehead and tell their entire past. So everybody that came to him would pull their hats down so he couldn't look at their foreheads, you know. But anyway, you know, we got a few minutes left. Yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
Greg, yeah, I was just, what came to mind there when you were speaking was a song, and I'm sure you have it over in the States as well. You know that song, "The knee bone's connected to the thigh
Yes.
bone, thigh bone's connected to the hip bone." In a similar way, these, you know, what are we? Well, we're pieces of knowledge strung together, you know, forming a living relationship of that knowledge in some sense. But we need to have knowledge of the joinings. You know, we need to seek out new knowledge of the next bit and the joining with that next bit, and then the bit after that and how we join with that, and the bit alongside, the sinew and the muscle and all the different levels and layers of the psyche. You see, all the different levels and layers within consciousness. We need to seek out that knowledge for ourselves so that we can understand it, so that we can begin to realize it into ourselves, into our nature. Otherwise, it remains dead, unknown, mysterious, black, undeveloped, work yet to be done, maybe next lifetime. You see, but by pulling it in, by actually being curious enough to seek out those relationships within ourselves, that's real work. There's the path, as I would understand it to be. And yeah, you know, all of the associated knowledges that come alongside that, how other people have experienced it, are experiencing it, they're all very useful as a guide for us to have our experience of it. See, and that's the important thing, you know. So I would be encouraging everybody, do it when you're walking down the road. You know, what's the world? The world is a world created by active imagination. Okay, work within the world at an imaginal level. See your process being manifested in front of you. How did that pop up in front of me? Just like that. You see, start becoming a student of magic.
What the ancients called magic, we call psyche. That's what Jung said, you know. And Jeffrey Raff, or his student, I think her name's Linda Doucette or something, said it's a matter of relentless memory. You know, the original word for ally was memory, you know, and that word ally came out of the word memory. But she says this relentless memory, you don't let these images. Each one is a stone in the temple of the redeeming temple. Now, could everyone give a closing statement, and then maybe Stuart could respond? Why don't Miles, do you want to start? Or where did Miles go? Or anybody? Go ahead, Miles.
Sorry, I was pushing buttons and hitting things.
Yeah.
Well, this was amazing. Very quickly, there was a moment when I was down in the meditative state and I was in a dream, and then, oh, there's Stuart's voice. Where am I, kind of thing, and then when he was bringing us up, I was actually teary-eyed, and I've put together 2 pages of notes about the experience. One of the things that I'll say, though, is with respect to Tim mentioning the Constitution. And I'm in Canada, Tim's in the United States. But I do believe what he said is very important, that we have to birth the truth. And I was also brought with me this photo that Skip shared the other day, and I'll just in a second here have it up for you. But I brought this into the meditation, among other things, with me today. And it occurs to me, this is the image on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and Skip pointed out that it's often cropped out such that we, very patriarchal cropping is done such that we don't see that God has his arm around Sophia, wisdom. And my thought through this meditation is that Adam's actually being called to pull, to help birth. You see that God and the energies that are around him are in a womb. And God, I'm now seeing it as he's wanting to be, as Craig has mentioned, birthed, brought into consciousness, along with everyone else that's in the womb there. And I was blown away just the other day when this was introduced to us. I actually walked under this image, but in my ego-centric mind, never appreciated what I was actually seeing. Now back to the Constitution. I think it's important for all of us to work on our constitutions, and I'd like to share a little bit of American history, which is not really that removed from Canadian history. And this is from the interview of Chief Oren, or Faithkeeper Oren Lyons. He's of the Turtle Clan Onondaga Council of Chiefs, the Haudenosaunee, also known as the Six Nations Confederacy. Faithkeeper Oren Lyons was active in the United Nations, State University of New York. He is Professor Emeritus of the University of Buffalo. He's on the board of Bioneers and the board of Plantagon International. And he, in this interview, says that the concept of democracy of the Iroquois, as you would say, was very impressive to the early fathers of the American nation. And in fact, there's Benjamin Franklin met with Chief Hendrick, back then a Mohawk chief, and asked Chief Mohawk to explain the Haudenosaunee concept of democracy. And this was in 1754 at a meeting in Albany. And when the Americans' fathers actually brought back their constitution and later and showed it to Chief Hendrick, once again, Chief Hendrick looked at it, or heard it, listened to it, and he said, well, that's all well and good, but where are the women? And this is something that Craig was talking about as well, that we've really cropped out the feminine, and it's time to restore that feminine. And that's, in summary, that is on my side of the border here, this medicine line. I'm actually working on section 35 and section 37 of our Constitution, because it's time for us to start telling the truth and starting to get real, to quote a song. So thank you very much, Stuart. This is
Thank
been
you,
very
Miles.
powerful.
Gary, do you have anything to finish statement? Or
Oh, sure. You know, I was just going to tell Stuart, you know, well, throughout the week, you know, I've been working on the aliveness where you try to, well, really, I guess it's relentless memory, because, you know, you just try to like, oh yes, you know, I really should be like trying to transfer. And to me, it almost feels like I'm transferring consciousness to my heart, you know, because it's like, you know, you feel like this shift. And then, you know, a time will go by, and then all of a sudden the conscious thought will come and you know, it'll switch again, you know, but it's, but I found it to be a, you know, a very good practice. And I've been, you know, trying, you know, in some of my meditations, I'm doing the same thing, just trying to go, I guess, really into my body, you know. And actually what I don't get the current that you're talking about, but I almost feel like I'm fermenting, you know, like I can feel my heart and stuff, but then there's this other thing going on. It feels like fermentation, you know, like literally kind of like bubbles rising through me or something. It's very strange. But anyway, I was going to say too, that document that I've got out there that I put Stuart's last talk, and I'll probably be updating it this week for this. And if I can, I'll try to separate out the meditation into a MP3, because I like that. I thought it was
yeah, I'm gonna post the meditation by itself, and then I'll post the entire session itself, because I thought of that after the meditation, that if you don't mind, Stuart, I'm gonna have just the meditation if somebody just wants to redo it, and because at the end I'd like you to give us an assignment for the next week. Sandy, do you have any closing thoughts?
I want to tell Stuart, thank you, and Craig and everybody. And Stuart, what I learned from you last week changed my life and has rippled out and affected my husband too in really positive ways. And I think after listening today, I feel the desire to do more, like a shorter meditation, practicing the presence, and just bringing that into my everyday life and keep practicing that, period. I mean, I did work with dreams and active imagination last week, but I feel more drawn to just practicing the presence for a little while.
That was very good advice by Stuart. I think is, to begin with, you have to build the foundations. You can't build the house without a foundation. So, I mean, it's this ability to perceive. Tim, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I've been working on, I not only did a big long page of notes like Miles, but I also did a drawing that I want to share that's just a vision of the, can you see this? That's sort of a vision of the feminine spirit composed of these two figures, a male and a female figure, that is, in my own mind, me trying to come into terms with my own anima, and together creating a reality that is my new character, as Stuart described. Stuart, that was just so beautiful, and thank you so much.
That's
I look forward to more.
going as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Louis, do you have any closing thoughts? Oh, you don't? Or do you want me to unmute you, or?
Oh, I finally found the button.
Oh, okay.
I would just say that, you know, meditation has a long, rich history in almost every culture and civilization, where people actively work to attain insights through meditation. But there is also divine revelation. Persons who have made no conscious effort to gain insight suddenly receive a revelation. We see that in Western religion. St. Paul is a good example, but also in the East with the practice of Zen, where suddenly in just one moment, one instant, a person can receive a revelation. And after the revelation, they remain an immortal human being, but they carry the meaning of the revelation with them throughout their lives.
This is the road to Damascus experience that is something like an annunciation. I mean, it's, you know, the idea though is it the final statement? But what now, 1, 2, 3, I don't know your name, but would you like to say a few words? Or can you unmute yourself? Let me see if I can unmute you. Well, I think your microphone isn't on or something. Well, Stuart, could you sum up?
Could I just say one more thing quickly?
Okay.
Just for the recording, with respect to what I was saying, anyone who wants to follow up on what I was referring to, it's Oren Lyons. The YouTube video is titled Oren Lyons on the Indigenous View of the World, produced by Tree TV. And I posted it in the chat, if the link is in the chat.
Thank you very much. I'll definitely watch that. Thank you, Miles. Okay, Stuart, what do you have an assignment or any closing thoughts?
Yeah. I always have, if you want.
Oh, yeah.
What I would say is, in relation to the word I use, current. The current is wherever we see life, where we recognize life. So if you're, the assignment being when you're outdoors, if you go for a walk down the road with the dog or just on your own or whatever way it is, driving the car, start noticing life. Start noticing how life is bigger than us, how nature is alive all around us, the birds, the weather. Start noticing all aspects of this current. Bring your attention to it and breathe it in. As soon as you connect with it, breathe it in. So connect with the energy of nature. If you see a stone, it's not just a stone. It's an alive stone. Breathe in the energy of the stone. Start making all of these sort of natural things your friend. Come out of isolation and start connecting with the current. So
it's very healing. I just, when that's the one thing as far as what Sandy's saying, Stuart, you're a ferment and you're a catalyst, and your words alone are healing. And I just felt, just in the last couple of sentences, I felt that mentioning being in touch with all the stones and the landscape around you, that is what we lack. That's our impoverishment. Well, anyway, maybe we'll do it the same thing next time. I'll go through the second Coniunctio as far as Jeffery Raff is concerned, and maybe Stuart, you can give us another short meditation too. I mean, this is a very good practice and learning. So anyway, thank you everyone, and it's a momentous occasion. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great weekend now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.